This is Bring Science Alive, TCI's award-winning online curriculum revolutionizing classrooms across the country. Bring Science Alive's lessons are hands-on, student-led, inquiry-based, and built from the ground up to support the next generation science standards. The curriculum makes it simple for students to interact with science in groups and independently, lead activities, and grasp the scientific phenomena they're studying. In a TCI science classroom, you'll find students digging for fossils, designing aerodynamic seeds, creating different waves, acting out cell structures, and much more.
Try a little bit stronger, a little bit harder. Yeah, there you go.
Bring Science Alive uses the latest technologies to maximize student engagement and learning both in the classroom as well as at home. It was created by teachers for teachers.
Who thinks we can make the puppets look smaller? Who's got an idea?
TCI creates a learning environment that students want to be a part of. Bring Science Alive is the next evolution of in-classroom science curriculum. It will revolutionize your classroom.
TCI has the full range of materials that you need to bring science alive inside your classroom. The teacher has a subscription for all of their lesson plans, investigations, formative and summative assessments. We offer both hardbound and online subscriptions for students because we know that schools need the flexibility for both. And in terms of lab materials, well, you can see in the background here that we'll have a full range of lab materials available for each one of our programs. Our middle school Bring Science Alive program constitutes 9 total programs that include life, earth, and physical science. This fall in 2017, we will release the first 4 of those programs. They will be cells and genetics, space, matter, and waves. Others will follow in the winter, and the rest will finish in the springtime. A total of 9 programs that will allow schools that want to teach integrated science the choices that they want to make to put a curriculum together for their students. Or if they teach disciplinary science, you could do all life, all earth, and all physical science. Flexibility is the key with TCI. Every Bring Science Alive middle school program is broken down into units. We're looking at the cells and genetics program, and within it, there are 5 units: traits, bodies, cells, genes, and changes in genes. Within a unit of instruction in Bring Science Alive, TCI's developers created a storyline to drive the students into the content, such as Unit 1 in Traits, where students are going to be helping to plan an eco-tour as part of their performance assessment. They're introduced to it at the very beginning of the unit, and then sandwiched in between, the students are going to be reading about traits for survival, traits for reproduction, as well as doing a hands-on investigation inside class for each of those. Now, for each investigation, there is an essential question that's going to drive the students deeper into that particular content piece. And as we look a little bit later on, you'll see how the features of the student subscription allow the students to really delve deeply into the content, as well as provide a lot of formative assessment. Within units, from time to time, students will complete an engineering challenge, such as in Unit 1 here, where students will work together to create a seed dispersal device. And as I said before, at the very end, because we want to keep that storyline looped throughout, the students will actually complete the performance assessment, which would then demonstrate their mastery of all that NGSS content. So we've done that within each of the units that are provided in the Bring Science Alive middle school programs. TCI's Bring Science Alive programs teacher resources with Bring Science Alive are web-based, meaning that you have access to them anywhere you have a live connection and on any type of modern connected device. So iPad, Chromebook, Mac, PC, we're device agnostic. So if you have an on-off switch and a browser and a live feed to the internet, you can get access to your teacher resources. We already took a look at the table of contents before, but now let's go a little bit deeper and look at all of the features within the TCI teacher subscription. First, when you click inside of a title to be able to do an investigation, you'll see a range of menus up here at the top. Lesson guides is our first stop, and that's where we're going to find information about differentiation, our standards, background, as well as the step-by-step procedures. And we'll see how that we can use this to both plan, prep, implement, and then later on be able to manage the TCI program. You also have a materials link for any materials that you need to gather together, whether they are from the TCI materials kit so that you can see what quantities you need to pull out, and they're all bagged by lesson, by the way, or if there are PDFs or handouts that you need to make available for students, you'll have those handy at the bottom as well. You'll have a link where you can create assignments for your students if they're using the online subscription. So you can manage their text, notebook, and the ability to take a lesson game, which is a formative assessment, as well as manage the ability to assign an online summative assessment to your students. Creating assessments is a snap within TCI's program. While we provide many opportunities for formative assessment throughout, we'll look at many of these in the student subscription, such as the lesson game, the interactive tutorial, the interactive student notebook, and vocabulary cards. We certainly also want to provide the teachers an ability to create a really good scaffolded summative assessment. And so TCI has created one that you can view both in English and Spanish within your Bring Science Alive subscription. But more importantly, you can create your own. So you can do that online or using print, or if you're in a school where you have several teachers teaching the very same content and you wanted to use a common assessment, one teacher can create an online assessment and then share that with others so that they can use that very same one. All of the student work that's completed online comes into what we call a TCI gradebook. And this is where you can view student responses from their notebook. So if you click inside, you'll actually be able to see the prompt that was given to the students, what is the model response or what is the answer key, what the student response looks like, and the ability for yourself to give feedback to the students. This all happens in real time, and the students don't need to submit anything to you. We'll look at some of those features within their interactive student notebook here in a second. But it's not just the notebook that you have access to be able to see scores of. There is a formative assessment within the student subscription called a lesson game. And it's at the end of every chapter. It challenges the students' reading comprehension skills and their mastery of that content piece. Well, I can drill inside and see how an individual student has answered on specific questions, and if they missed it, what did they think was the right answer? While that's very powerful, one of the other things that I can do is do a trend as a class. In other words, an item analysis, and see what percentage of my students in that class answered those questions correctly on the first attempt. And if there's a low area, like we see here on questions 2 and 4, that's really good information for me to have as a teacher so that I can hit that content again before the students move to a summative assessment. If I had given my students an online assessment within this particular chapter here, the scores would populate right here, and it's a little bit of a combination of the notebook and the lesson game, in that closed-ended items, which are the lesson game type of items, multiple choice, they're going to be scored automatically. But if it's an open response item, you'll need to go in and view and grade it, and then it will go ahead and populate a final score. Teachers do have the ability of giving their students a participation grade within each one of the investigations within the program. That's also a formative assessment tool. And you can export this table as a CSV so that if you use a grading program that allows you to import, then you can make it a snap to transfer the grades from here into your permanent school grade book. There are some additional resources that we'd encourage you to look at, but I want to go back here to the lesson guides because that is really what drives our use of the program. If you mouse over the tool down here at the bottom, you'll see that you can present edit and preview, make a copy, and even print a guide. While our teacher subscription is web-based, these lesson procedures are things that you can print out. And the lesson procedures, what do they look like? Well, they're really great because it allows you as a teacher to be able to see what the lesson looks like as it unfolds, but later on you can also use it to facilitate the activity. In edit and preview, I see each of the slides. In other words, I'm going to see a breakdown of every component of the lesson in a slide. And I'll have any kind of teacher notes off to the right. Within edit and preview, I even have a slide carousel that allows me to be able to quickly pick where I want to be within a lesson. And I can even hide specific slides, and very soon we'll even be able to insert my own. I'm going to go ahead and click present, and we're going to look at some of those very first slides inside of this particular investigation. Each lesson begins with an essential question. And in this lesson, how can problems caused by wind and water be solved? That's what's going to drive us into the content. At the very beginning, I'll see what are my NGSS standards. What materials that I need to gather together. Any materials that I might need to print out. And some tips and tricks about preparation and getting things ready to be able to use inside the classroom for that investigation. We'll even put together a little video clip that shows how to conduct the investigation with your students. That's good for you, but you can also use it to model for the students what they're going to be doing. We'll give you a lesson cycle so that you can see how every component within the lesson feeds into that essential question. Every lesson has a common cycle, and while the investigations themselves can feel very different from one to the next, there is a common cycle from preview, which is to your anticipatory set, into the content, an investigation, and then a processing which challenges the students to demonstrate their higher order thinking skills. As we move forward, we'll see the lesson procedures unfold. And they're written in a way in which, as a teacher, you can use these to not only see how the lesson will unfold, but later on, once you're ready to actually conduct the lesson or investigation with your students, you can use this as a backdrop because all of the prompts are written in a student-friendly language. They have helpful images, video and audio included and embedded within for every piece of the lesson. And so that is what the lesson guide is all about. Now we go a step further because we want every student to participate in our program. We think about every student and the different abilities that are inside of our classroom. So when you click on lesson guides, click on differentiation and differentiating instruction, and you'll see modification suggestions for ELL students, for students that have special needs, and on the other end of the ability spectrum, what can we do to enrich the advanced learners inside of our classroom? We also provide a link for enhancing learning, and this is a great place where you can go for additional reading opportunities or websites or web links that go right along with that content piece. Again, we thought from the beginning to the end around the NGSS framework and built this program up around it. So we've already seen a little bit of where we can see the standards within the lesson, but there's also a learning progression that our developers took into to account. And so here I'm seeing the lesson progressions, or learning progressions, I should say, for all of the NGSS standards from early elementary up through 5th grade as it relates to this particular core idea. At the end of a lesson, we obviously want to review the science background and information, but it's also good to have that up front as a teacher. And so we'll always provide that for you as a link in the lesson guides area. So this is the teacher subscription here. In a second, we're going to toggle into the student view. But before I stop and do that, let me point to the power of having that tool available. Your teacher subscription not only has access to all of your teacher-related materials, you also have access to everything that the students have access to through what we call Student View. So as a teacher, if you ever need to project the text or project a particular part of a student subscription, you can do so from your teacher subscription just by going to Student View. And that's going to be our next stop as we look at the student subscription features. Students who are using the Bring Science Alive program can do so using a hardbound textbook, or they may have an online subscription, such as we're seeing here. Within the online subscription, the students have access to the text, content-related notes, and other formative assessment tools, as well as the ability to take summative assessments. When students are at the table of contents, that's not only where they're going to see the individual units and chapters within their program, but it's also we're going to see where they will see any upcoming assignments that they have to complete. Let's click inside of a chapter to see some of the features within the student text itself. One of the things that will jump out to you is the ability that students have to be able to have the text read aloud to them, to see the main ideas, to be able to add their own specific notes, or even Spanish. This is the same text as what would appear in the print edition. There's no difference between it, but here we have a content plus environment where students have not only the same content as what's in the book, but those additional features. And let's see some of those in action. So for example, if the students need to have the text read aloud to them.
1. Molecular motion in solid.
Or if they need to see the main ideas within a section of text, it's going to bold the key sentences there. Students have their definitions at a point of need, such as a state of matter. If I click on it, it's going to auto-populate the definition right there for me. Now this middle school program also has the ability to toggle into Spanish. Down here, if I click on any of the images, the charts, the infographics, what I'll see is a blow up of whatever that item is, as well as the caption off to the side or underneath. And I even have a little built-in magnifying glass on a Mac, a PC, or a Chromebook that I can use to analyze the items in greater detail. Now, we didn't forget iOS or Android devices. You can always pinch and zoom on those. Underneath the text, you're going to find what we call an interactive tutorial. Now, this little formative assessment takes on many different shapes and sizes and different features within specific chapters in the Bring Science Alive program. In this particular one, after the students have read through this section on molecular motion in solids, the students can come down here to an interactive tutorial, and they're going to drag and drop true statements into the picture on the right. It's not always drag and drop. Sometimes they watch a video clip. Sometimes they may have to manipulate an interactive feature on the screen. But in this case, the students are going to drag a couple of features that they believe are true to the picture, check their answers, and if they get it correct, great. They can go ahead and go on and complete their interactive notebook. So they have an interactive tutorial that allows them to check their own understanding. And this is a sandbox, so it doesn't report to the teacher right here. But when the students come down here to take their content-related notes, this we kind of looked at before in the teacher subscription. So as the students complete an item, whether it's annotated, such as this one, where they can use the drawing tools, or they can use a text box or whatever, or if it's an item where they're going to type in a response, it's a lot like Google Docs in that roughly about every second that a student works inside of the TCI subscription, it's going to auto-save their work, and it becomes automatically available within the teacher subscription itself. So we've looked at three very powerful tools right off the bat here in the text, the tutorial, and the interactive student notebook seamlessly work together. Now, of course, the students are going to be doing lots of hands-on investigations, and so each one of the Bring Science Alive subscriptions also includes those pages that the students would need to be able to use during those investigations. So you can click on the investigation notebook up here at the top, and that's where they'll see the prompts that they complete as they're conducting those hands-on investigations inside class. Let me take a step back and let's talk about the end of a lesson and a formative assessment tool that does go to you as a teacher, and that's a lesson game. So at the end of a chapter, the students will have an opportunity to play a little bit of a game, and it's going to challenge their reading comprehension and their content preparedness. So right here, for example, after we've studied the motion of particles, the students will be presented with some questions that they can answer. They'll answer it, submit, get it wrong, they can try again, And if they miss it a second time, even be told what the correct response is. Now remember, in our teacher subscription earlier in our grade book, the lesson game scores populate right there. Teachers can see the individual results or even do an item analysis together as a class. So this makes a really great formative assessment to be able to see where are the weak areas that I need to focus on as a teacher with particular individual students, or even as a class if I find an instructional gap through the item analysis or what we call the View Trends button. The student subscription also has the animated vocabulary cards. And so this is where they'll find their key content terms, where they can flip from one side to the other to see the definition. And similar to you, they're going to have lots of additional resources that they can use. The one that I think you would find that's really important is the ability to take an online assessment. So if a teacher assesses an online summative to the students would then go to their table of contents where they would see it assigned there, or they can click under resources, click on assessments here. And for all of the work that they complete inside the program, they'll always be able to see the scores that they have received for each of those components. So the student subscription is more than just their content. It's an ability for the students to interact with that content, do formative assessment, and even summative assessment.